We're going to go ahead and get started here. We're going to start tonight's meeting of the March 10th City Council meeting. Call that to order. I'm going to start with an invocation by Timothy Miller, and then Kalisa Rochester is going to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. So if you please rise.
Let's pray. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for this day. We thank you for everything you've done and everything you will do. Lord, we pray that you will give our city council members wisdom. We pray that you will meet with us, and we pray that you will bless this meeting. We pray that all the decisions that are made for your honor and your glory. We love you and we thank you. And in Jesus' name, amen.
Roll call.
Ambrose.
Here.
Kale.
Here.
Raymond.
Here.
Rochester.
Here.
Nelson.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Do we have any subsequent need items?
Mayor, there are none.
Okay. Need a motion to approve the agenda as posted.
So moved. Second.
Motion by Raymond, second by Kale. Kale.
Yes.
Ambrose.
Yes.
Raymond.
Yes.
Rochester.
Yes.
Nelson.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Okay, now we're on to the consent calendar.
At this time, any person may comment. Sorry. Background information has been provided on all matters listed under the consent calendar, and these items are considered to be routine. All items under the consent calendar are normally approved by one motion. If a council member requests separate discussion on any item, that item will be removed from the consent calendar for separate action.
Is there any public comment on the consent calendar? Okay, seeing no one come forward, I'm closing public comment. Are there any items on the calendar for council would like to remove for separate discussion and possible action? Seeing none, who would like to make the motion?
So moved. Second.
Motion by Raymond, second by Ambrose. Kale.
Yes.
Ambrose.
Yes.
Raymond.
Yes.
Rochester.
Yes.
Nelson.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Okay, so I would like to welcome you all here tonight. We only have this one item on the agenda tonight, a request from City Council Member Rochester regarding the review and discussion of the Fruitland Avenue Reconstruction Project Phase 3. I know some of you want to speak and didn't have the opportunity for speaker cards because we ran out, but rest assured you will have your opportunity to speak. Everybody that wants to speak will be allowed to speak. So we're going to start off with the staff presentation. City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor, Council, and everyone in the audience. Thank you for being here tonight. I'm going to give some background on the project and then introduce a couple of the engineers that helped us with this. So first, I'd like to say that Council gave previous direction. However, we're here tonight to discuss an alternative, and I'll repeat this later, but I just like to make the point that if there is no direction given tonight, or for example, if there's a motion that fails or something like that, then by default the staff will continue with previous council direction. So the two options, and option one would be to continue the project, and that's the default. However, option two is to pause construction on the segment of Fruitland Avenue between Winton Way and Schaefer Road to provide sufficient time to engineer the project to exclude traffic circles and the choker islands, which are they're also known as bulb outs. Also to identify and approve supplemental funding at a future city council meeting, and meanwhile continue construction on the segment of Fruitland Avenue west of Winton Way in front of the high school. Also, if there's other direction that's given tonight, staff is happy to follow whatever direction that the council gives at their pleasure. The project was originally commenced in 2016. It was to address infrastructure needs, traffic flow improvements, and stormwater management. There were various questions and concerns that have recently been raised, and that's why we're here tonight. So phase one of the project happened in 2019, 2020, and it included the initial reconstruction efforts, including limited roadway improvements, and a stormwater pump station. Phase two was 2020 to 2023. It included additional stormwater infrastructure, right-of-way acquisition, and preliminary work for the final phase. So we're in phase three right now, which is a comprehensive reconstruction effort and the finalization of the traffic calming measures. Public outreach efforts included an initial meeting in 2016, subsequent meetings in 2022. There were also council meetings in 2024 for the project design approval and awarding the bid to George Reed Incorporated. They're the contractor that is working with the city to complete the construction of the project. A key component of the Fruitland Avenue reconstruction project is the implementation of traffic calming measures, including 3 traffic circles and 12 choker islands. The project's history indicates that residents of the eastern portion of Fruitland Avenue and surrounding neighborhoods voiced concerns at the time, this was some years ago, over excessive speeding, cut-through traffic from people trying to avoid Bellevue Road's traffic signals, and pedestrian safety risks. These reports highlighted the need for enhanced safety measures. So Bellevue Road, as we all know, it has 5 traffic signals inclusively between Winton Way and Schaefer Road. And Fruitland Avenue does not have any of those traffic signals, but it does have 2 all-way stop-controlled intersections, the ones with the stop signs. So the city records show that the stop signs on Fruitland Avenue do not meet the state traffic warrant requirements. And that prompted an alternative approach to do some traffic calming. This led to directives for the installation of traffic circles, and particularly at intersections where connecting streets on the south side contributed to that cut-through traffic. So in the current construction schedule, pending weather, the contractor is planning to do the forming and pouring of concrete and curbs and gutters starting Friday or next week. It just really depends on the weather. However, we're here tonight, so the council is looking at this, and there could be a change of direction. That's why we're here talking about this. So although considerable engineering and construction work has already occurred along Fruitland Avenue, staff seeks direction from the city council on a path forward. If there's no motion, or if the motion fails, again, as I said earlier, staff will by default follow the previous direction from the council. So option 1 is that default, and it would be to continue the project. As the city council previously approved a construction contract with George Reed in June of 2024, continuing the project would allow the contractor to complete the project sooner and potentially avoid excessive escalation costs due to the increased material costs, inflation, wage increases, etc. Option 2 would be to pause construction between Winton Way and Schaefer Road, and this would allow time to evaluate and engineer new plans that don't include traffic circles or choker islands. The delays involved in pausing construction depend on the extent of the changes to the plans, and staff estimates that there would be increased costs associated with this option. At the time last week of writing the staff report, that those associated costs for pausing and re-engineering and then changing the project and constructing it differently were written at $500,000 to $750,000. But we've gotten an updated list of costs, a breakdown of costs, and it's a little bit less than that. So it's looking more like $300,000 to $450,000 as a cost. And so I just want that to be part of the record of that update because it currently says differently in the staff report. So these costs include temporary paving, remobilization, which means if the equipment is sent away and then we have to bring it back, there's a cost in doing that. Engineering costs, inspection costs, and potential escalation costs from George Reed. The funding sources to account for these cost increases would need to be identified and approved at a future city council meeting. Those costs, if the city were to spend the money in this way, then that could delay other planned street improvement projects in other parts of the city. So as the majority of the concerns that the city received involved removing traffic calming features on the east side of Fruitland and have not focused on changes necessarily to the west side of Fruitland, it seems that the majority of the people are talking about the east part of Fruitland, the traffic circles and the Choker Islands. And for that reason, staff would recommend continuing the project in front of the high school because it also needs improvement and the road surface there needs to be redone. So again, that's option 2. And I just want to also say if the council decides to move forward with option 2, then to expedite the process, staff would request the motion also direct staff to immediately begin work on engineering changes to the plans at a cost not to exceed $60,000, and staff would then bring an item at the next council meeting to approve a contract amendment with the city engineer and approve the appropriate budget transfer or reallocation so that we can get started right away. So I want to talk about the fiscal impacts of the project. This project had a combination of funding sources, including Measure V, which is a local sales tax. The city gets roughly $800,000 each year and it depends on the projects really that we have going on. ARPA, which is the American Rescue Plan Act, that was a one-time funding source, which it's over with now, but that was used to fund this project. LTF is the Local Transportation Fund. Last year we got roughly $300,000. That's also a part of the sales tax, and the Merced County Association of Governments allocates those funds. Then we have RSTP, which is the Regional Surface Transportation Program, and the city received roughly $800,000 last year as well, just to give you an idea. And these funding sources are used for various projects throughout the city, sidewalk improvements, road, all those sorts of things. And then SB1, it's Senate Bill 1, that's another funding source, approximately $800,000 that we get each year, but it does vary. Like some years it's lower, like $300,000, for example. So while previous phases, when we're looking at the project as a whole, if there's cost overruns, then they need to be addressed through budget reallocations or supplemental funding sources. And other than the engineering that we would request be started right away, if option 2 is the option that the council wants to move forward with, we need to identify the funding sources to do this change if this is what the council wants to do, and those would be approved at a future city council meeting. So right now it's just looking for direction, then we'd come back with the funding sources to finalize those. The staff report contains a summary of public outreach efforts that were conducted by the city, and now I'd like to introduce 2 gentlemen. Michael Hayes is the contract city engineer, and Jose Benavides, he's a traffic engineer that's also contracted with the city, And I'd like to invite Michael to come up and speak about a little bit about the history of Fruitland, and then Jose can talk a little bit about traffic study, traffic warrants, different things like that. Thank you.
Thank you, City Manager Holm. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, council, staff. Mr. Holm, you did a great job summarizing the project. As far as history, is that better? No? Let's see. Better yet? Okay. I think you gave a great history of the project. So maybe I could just say a couple of questions that I get asked a lot are, if we started this project in 2016, why are we building it in 2024, 2025? As we know, this is a pretty expensive project for the city. Back in 2016, Community Development Department projected it would take about 10 years to have the available funding. They presented several different options for phasing the project. Ultimately, that was broken out into the 3 phases that Mr. Holm discussed. The first was sort of an emergency repair of the corner that was really quite degraded in terms of pavement. Vehicles sometimes drove off the road onto the shoulder because it was better than the road itself. Public Works was doing the best they could with the equipment and the materials available to keep it in operation. They were out there quite a bit. So that was the first phase, built sort of as an emergency thing by Taylor Backhoe. The second phase followed the city's acquisition of the parcel just north of the Save Mart Shopping Center. And that included construction of the stormwater basin, which is the low point for collecting all of the water on the east side of Winton Way, and the pump station that discharges to the Atwater Canal. And that made it possible for the rest of the infrastructure that would be part of phases, subsequent phases that include the drainage improvements. So there was somewhere for that water to go and then be discharged into the MID facility. So after phase 2, it took, again, a number of years for the city to sequester the funding to be able to ask for bids. The phase that's currently under construction is phase 3, which goes from Orchard Park to Winton Way on the west segment, and from Winton Way to Capitola, or just east of Capitola, on the east side. There was an additive alternate to build the completion of the project from Capitola to Schaefer Road, but that portion was a little outside of the city's reach right now for funding. So phase 3 is what it is, as you know, from Orchard Park to just east of Capitola. I'm not sure there's much more to add in terms of the history of the project, other than the summary that you gave, but if there are questions, I could certainly answer those about the history, or do my best at least.
I do have a question. So are you here tonight, Mr. Hayes, because just for transparency purposes, you are part owner of VVH, right? And VVH designed this portion of Fruitland Avenue, yeah?
Yes, the city hired VVH in 2016 as an on-call consultant. We responded to an RFP for the design contract for this. And yes, I am a part owner of the company.
Okay. And City Manager Holm introduced you as the city's engineer. So
Yes.
I can clarify that. So I introduced him as the city's contract engineer. We were contracted with VVH, and he's filling in that role or acting as the city engineer right now.
okay. So you were present to sign the contract in 2016. So you have the most historical knowledge probably in this room, likely?
That's a fair statement.
Okay. So as far as public outreach goes, I don't know if it's too soon to ask the question about public outreach, but I do have a question about that because that seems to be the sticking point for most of the folks in the room. When I look at the contract from 2016, some things that stand out to me is meet with affected residents, 3 attempts will be made, document their concerns and/or requests of residents and homeowners, coordinate with city staff regarding resident concerns or requests. And those requests and concerns may be regarding driveways, fences, walls, mailboxes, landscaping, sidewalks, utilities, and then follow up with residents or homeowners who express concerns or requests to update them on the status. And then specifically, the deliverables would be, you would list the residences that are adjacent to the project area with dates of contact or your attempted contact, and then any notes about any concerns or requests. Another deliverable would be meeting notes from the coordination with the City of Atwater, and then copies of any exhibits or sketches that you've prepared for coordination purposes. Do you have any of the notes available for the deliverables as stated in the contract?
The city requested us not to perform that portion of our contract.
Who's the city?
So we were directed to have a town hall meeting instead. So we,
If I may, Michael, can you clarify the date that happened?
there is a timeline that I prepared. There were,
Or the year?
this was all in 2016.
Okay, thank you.
So we, as we went through the project, right, we had 15% conceptual plans that the city reviewed. We prepared options for, at the city's request, for different traffic calming measures, which they reviewed with staff and officials and first responders. Made a selection on what they wanted to scope in the project. At the 35% level, we asked about beginning public outreach, and we were asked to hold off on that. At the 65% plans, we asked about public outreach, and we were asked to hold on advancing the plans until public outreach could be completed. And the city at that time elected to have a town hall meeting and to notice residents and hold it instead of having door-to-door outreach like we had scoped.
I have a question for you, Michael.
Yeah.
So, somebody from the city said you do not reach to the community involved. Do you know who that individual was who made that decision or told you not to do that?
Our contract administrator was the community development director. I don't know who he was receiving direction from.
Okay, thank you.
I do have another question. It's related to what Councilman Kale was referencing. So when we are talking about city, and we're not quite sure who's providing the direction, why was it not brought back to the council to say that you were going to, or the city staff was recommending to amend the contract? Do we know why we didn't have that amended? Because the contract was approved by the council.
I understand that. I don't know why that wasn't brought back to council.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Michael at this point? I have.
Go ahead.
Since we're talking about public outreach, I'm glad you brought that up. In the 3 years that I sat on the planning commission before being elected to mayor, this project kind of percolating around. But my thing's always been, why don't we have better public outreach? What is the legal limits that you have to announce a project to? Like the people on Fruitland are going to get the notice, right? But the people,
Right.
well, are supposed to get the notice. Let's just put it that way. But yet the people that live on Chardonnay and Strawberry and on down, that they're only in and out of their neighborhood is Fruitland didn't get notified. It drives me nuts.
Mayor, I think I can try to answer that. So typically it's 300 feet. However, it's best practice to include other streets that are involved that would, for example, travel through the area that's being affected. And that would be a good practice to make sure that we're doing.
Well, needless to say, I got a lot of pushback on my idea, so.
I'm just wondering if there were any other alternatives that were considered. I know that we're thinking back, but the traffic circles and the chokers are permanent fixes, it seems. You know, it would cost a lot of money to remove those. So I'm just wondering if other cheaper alternatives were considered for traffic calming measures, because you know, there are speed humps, there's signage that can show digitally and flash, and there are, you know, bumps that you could do on either side. A lot of different things. Was that ever considered as an alternative?
Yes, there were alternatives considered. We presented the city with options for narrowing the intersections. It could be like bulb outs. It's something you see pretty common in like downtown areas, right, with slower speeds. And it helps reduce the, you know, the crossing distance that pedestrians have as well with those kind of bulb outs. Those and traffic circles are what were looked at for the intersections. So initially the city requested us to prepare an exhibit to show one traffic circle and a crosswalk at 5th Street. And that was before the public outreach meeting in 2016. After the public outreach meeting in 2016, the city asked us to add 2 more traffic circles, one at Laura and one at Capitola. There were other, as far as the chokers go, we had presented an option for chokers. We also talked about speed humps. At the time, the first responders preferred the chokers to narrow the roadway over the speed humps.
So it was the city that actually held the public outreach meetings?
The city secured the venue and notified the residents, and VVH staffed, together with city staff, the public outreach meeting.
Okay, did you prepare a report that documented residents' concerns from that meeting?
We had a meeting with city staff to debrief from that, and we have some notes on it. I don't have those with me, but I don't know if there was a report prepared or not. I'd have to look at the records for that.
So when did you start the design for phase 3? Because I see that there was an original contract, then there was an amendment to the contract in 2016. That contract, initially it was, we paid, I believe, $100,000 from our gas tax fund. And then from there on, an amendment, which was Amendment 1, looks like it was around $212,000. And then there was another amendment in 2023, a second amendment where the city paid VVH $214,000. So at what point did you actually design phase 3? Was it with the first contract or the second?
So the first contract was sort of holistic over the whole project. And then during phase 3, the city had asked for, there were initially a number of driveways back in the initial design that staff had directed to be removed, a lot of residences that had 2 driveways. Over the years, the city's position on that has changed. They like to accommodate keeping the existing access. I don't know exactly when it started. I'd have to look at that. You probably know that, but I don't know it off the top of my head.
I'm not sure when you started the design, the actual design for phase 3 on Fruitland East. The only thing that I've raised awareness of is in, I think it was 2017 for the Measure V capital improvement plan. That plan indicated that traffic circles were going to be placed in front of Atwater High School. And I have asked why we have a report that says we were placing the circles in front of Atwater High School to alleviate congestion. And I have asked the question also, if we didn't meet the warrant requirement for the stop signs, how can we justify to say that we have congestion going on for the need for the traffic circles?
Well, traffic circles are an alternative to stop signs. There's not a warrant for traffic circles. There is a warrant for stop signs.
Right.
Those are state and federal rules, not local rules. And as you asked, I believe in December, the question about in front of Atwater High School, and I think my response then is the same now. That I believe that was prepared in error by the city manager at the time without input from staff. But we have no records of anything that ever indicated traffic circles were considered west of Winton Way. Not your current city manager, by the way.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, do you have anything further to add to the discussion?
I don't think so, Mr. Mayor.
Any other questions? Okay, Chris?
So,
Oh, okay.
you said two different things, and I want to make sure we get this clear. Somebody in the city told you not to inform these people. And then you said in 16 you affirmed them. Which one was it? When did they tell you not to inform the citizens? Before it or afterwards?
Yeah, that's a good question, so maybe it wasn't clear. So the city did not remove public outreach entirely. The city decided on a different approach to public outreach. So we had proposed to go door to door to each residence for public outreach. The city decided it was a better idea to have a town hall and to prepare large posters of the project. We printed several. They were, I think, 12 to 14 feet long that we put up on the walls in here. Or it might have been at the community center. I can't remember.
Yeah, sure.
Okay. And then we had several color exhibits that were more detailed, accessible on podiums for people to look at. So I think information was never removed. The city just decided on a different approach.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Michael.
Sure.
Next, Jose Benavides is the traffic engineer that's contracted with the city and can provide some more information. Thank you, Jose.
Good evening, members of the council, Mayor Nelson, City Manager Holm. So I personally wasn't too involved in the project, but I can give you some history of what took place prior to the start of design. In and around 2015, the Traffic Commission have requested through Development Department Director, I believe, that we analyze various intersections throughout the city. And on Fruitland Avenue, there was 4 that we were asked to look at, one of them being Orchard Park at Fruitland, Virginia at Fruitland, Chardonnay Way at Fruitland, as well as Capitola at Fruitland. We prepared always stop warrants consistent with the California MUTCD. The volumes on these roads are very light to meet always stop warrants. They're nowhere near close. The busiest of these streets, which is across from the high school, even those are at about 50% of the volumes that they would need. Recently, I relooked at some of these warrants. I don't see that any of these would meet warrants today, nor any time in the near future. So all I can think of is that as the project went through design, they're trying to figure out, okay, we cannot enforce always stops. What could we do at some of these intersections? I do recall from the Traffic Commission, and this is just off the back of my head, that there was complaints that Capitola was one of these roads that was used as a shortcut to circumvent driving along Bellevue. And the same thing with, I believe, Fifth, on closer to the west before we get to Winton. So I think the roundabout probably came as a potential option because under the California MUTCD, for a roundabout, you don't need to meet a warrant. And one of the reasons for that is that roundabouts will slow traffic down. They will reduce the number of potential collision points, which is a safety issue. And they also dramatically reduce severity of collisions. So when we're thinking about safety, roundabouts do help quite a bit. Yes, they do cost more than always stops considerably. I mean, but some of the issue also that happens with unwarranted always stops is the liability, because when people approach an intersection, and let's say I'm driving along Fruitland and I approach this intersection and I rarely see traffic from one of the side streets, sometimes people will start just simply going through the intersection, and that could lead into a collision. I don't see that the city has had a large number of collisions. That's not the case along at least the east leg of Fruitland. Let me see what else. So I think, my glasses,
It's Rochester.
sorry. Yeah, Councilman Rochester, you asked about how can you justify roundabouts but not always stops. It's largely because of that, because roundabouts or traffic circles or things, traffic calming features do not require warrants.
Yeah, I didn't ask why not always stops. What I asked was, what about other alternatives, such as traffic humps, the flashing signs that show a person's speed? I'm referencing a Caltrans manual that specifically talks about traffic calming features that I read that provides other alternatives. Because what I did read was that when you're looking at rural roads, which I would assume that potentially it might be safe to say that if we're not meeting 50% of the requirement for a stop sign, that we could safely assume that Fruitland would be considered a rural road from Schaefer to Winton Way. So what I read was that a lot of folks, when you have so many of those chokers, like 12 in a 1.7 mile stretch, that people will tend to drive down the center to avoid not having to go around those chokers, which could cause a head-on collision, where we haven't had any notable collisions on Fruitland East.
Yeah, like I said, I wasn't involved in the chokers decision at all. But even with rural types rules for warrants, you still would not fall anywhere near close with those volumes. And usually the rural versus urban is sometimes, it's really applied based on speed. So in this case, the speed is, at that time it was 35. Right now, it's currently posted at 30. Once you get new pavement, the chances are, we were able to justify 30 miles because of safety concerns, but if we had just posted at the nearest 5 mile per hour increment, it would still be 35. Once you get new pavement, if the engineering and traffic survey, which is the prevailing speed for this road, goes up, chances are it may go back up to 35 if there are no traffic calming features.
So one of the things I heard you say was that what these circles do is they slow traffic down, right? I think one of the other concerns that I have is for our public safety. And so individuals who might need the police or fire to respond, would it not also slow them down to be able to respond to the residents?
It's similar in approach that the design of these roundabouts are supposed to accommodate the emergency vehicles such as fire trucks. They can use the portions of the pavement within the roundabout or concrete that cars can't. It can slow down a fire truck to the point roughly probably going through these intersections, I would say about to 10 miles per hour. But if you have always stops, usually a fire truck is still gonna slow down a little bit and make sure that they can proceed without hitting anybody. If it was, but part of the problem is that you have always stops that don't meet warrants. So most engineers are not gonna be able to sign off on any set of plans that has always stops.
Maybe our fire chief can answer that question. I think that is a good question for him.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Appreciate the opportunity to be up here. So the answer to that is, does it slow down fire apparatus? Yes. Do I feel like it has a drastic impact on emergency response? The answer is no. Calming measures are built just for that reason, and it's to slow traffic. Emergency responders are required to abide by all laws. We're requesting the right-of-way, however, we're not granted it. So we come up to a traffic calming measure, we have to slow down to 5 to 10 miles an hour to get around. However, my answer is I don't feel it has a drastic impact on the emergency response times as a whole.
Thank you.
And I'd be happy to answer anything else while I'm up here, or if you want me to come back up.
And thank you, Jose. Unless any other questions for Jose?
Oh, no, I'm good. Sorry.
That concludes staff's presentation. Thank you for your questions.
Does the council have any other questions for Chris or anybody else?
I do have a question. It's related to the CEQA categorical exemption. When I looked at the bid sheet for the construction that the city put out in 2024, what I noticed was that it was anticipated that the person who bid on the project would be required to remove 25 trees. And so I'm just wondering how we can apply for a categorical exemption knowing that potentially we're going to remove 25 trees, which is, in my opinion, not minimal, particularly for a city that's having difficulty with maintaining groundwater. So I'm not quite sure how we landed there.
So just trying to step back in time, I think it looks like, interpreting the history of the project here, that the decision was made to use a categorical exemption, actually 2 categorical exemptions, existing facilities and new construction. And within those exemptions, it talks about a variety of changes that could happen to a streetscape, including new bicycle lanes or bus lanes, different sorts of facilities along those lines, as well as infrastructure like the electric power, natural gas, water lines, those sorts of things. And the main thing that must be avoided in order to use that categorical exemption is that it cannot increase the number of lanes. So if we had added more lanes to the project, for example, 2 lanes in each direction on Fruitland, then that categorical exemption under CEQA could not have been used. But removing trees fits within that categorical exemption because despite the number of trees, it is still within that existing facilities CADX. And that's my interpretation of how that decision was made in the past.
So I guess my next question is related back to the public outreach. And I know that it's difficult for us to answer the question here as we sit here, but in 2016, evidently a decision was made by the city to amend a contract related to public outreach. However, there is no amendment to the contract in writing. So in my opinion, that would mean that the company is in breach of their contract if there's nothing stating that that was changed in a way that the council would have approved it. So if we're gonna amend a contract, the city, I would assume that if it's not in writing, then it didn't happen. So why wasn't it amended?
I have no idea. I wasn't here. I'm not going to make up a reason right now. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know either. We could go back and look at the contract from 2016.
I have it here.
Okay. And you know, I'm happy to review anything that you'd like to look at.
Any other question? I know you'll have questions later.
Yeah, I'll reserve my questions till later.
I have one. City Manager, you stated the number of different resources that we are using for that project. Are any of those resources, because I was told this, are dependent upon us using traffic measures, alternative traffic calming measures?
No, not necessarily.
Okay, I was told that. I was absolutely told that. And Council Lady Rochester, you said something that is extremely prominent to how I view things. That calming measures that are out there, people are just going to drive down the center of the road. And in reality, they would probably go through a stop sign too. So I took it as saying, don't put calming measures here, so they'll stay on the side of the road. On their side of the road, and not drive down the center. And I'm saying, we gotta have some kind of calming measures. Because in 16 and before, everybody was saying, there's so much traffic down here. Not only is there a lot of traffic, but they're flying down here. And people got hurt. Yes, there's not a lot of accidents. And I honestly, I've driven by here, I don't know how many times. And I purposely drove there yesterday, very slowly, watched cars. I don't know, Jose could tell me what reaches what level, but I didn't see a whole lot, but you know what I did see? They were fast. They were driving faster than me. I was just saying that is what I saw. Thank you.
Okay, I didn't want to have to say this. You know, we're Atwater. We got a good city here. We have a good community. Let's remember to keep it civil. You have your chance to speak. It's the council's turn to speak. You may not agree with what anybody says, but let's don't be disagreeable. So, are you finished? Yes. Okay. Anybody down there? Okay. So we're going to start with the public comment. There had been how many people, just raise your hands if you plan on speaking. Okay, so we had discussed this earlier. There had been some discussion about cutting it down to 2 minutes, which is perfectly within my purview to do that. But because Roger has been very good about keeping his comments to 3 minutes, I didn't want to throw him off. So you're all going to get 3 minutes. You don't have to take the 3 minutes, but you're welcome to. Okay, all right. I'm lenient. Okay, so we're going to start with the speaker cards first, and then anybody else that didn't get speaker cards, you will be given an opportunity to speak. Janelle?
Okay, the first speaker card is Roger Wood.
You are not Roger Wood.
I am not Roger Wood, but I am Chi-Chi Wood. I am his wife, and I reside at 1200 Fruitland. I'd like to define the word constituent according to Webster, since I'll be using it a lot. Constituent, people who are represented by an elected official or residents of a district or electric district. So as you can see, this room is full of your constituents and voters. As elected officials representing us, you should be open to listening and acting on their concerns, not your personal thoughts, but those of your constituents. They may not be something you personally agree with, but that's not your job. The Fruitland residents are your constituents that have come before you numerous times to talk about the street project. This project is unanimously opposed by these residents. We've been met with hostility and disrespect and even ignored when trying to voice our thoughts about this not being for the greater good of our street. None of you live on this street, so you don't see what's happening on a daily basis. It is not an unsafe street as you may think. We have 2 stop signs and a speed bump that keep it safe. So as your constituents, I feel you should be listening to our concerns and protests about continuing this not wanted project. Today, I experienced traffic gone wrong in front of Atwater High. Traffic from Fruitland was being directed through the parking lot and back onto Fruitland. The resource officer was directing traffic since it was congested and confusing. The school was given no notice until it was time to release students. Another example of a project gone wrong. Right now, it's a hot mess with all the construction, and to top it all off, our mailboxes have been removed. Now we have to deal with the post office and retrieve our mail, and we all know how that's going to turn out. So far, I've had several pieces of my mail misplaced and have yet to find them. So listen to your constituents and voters and do what is right for them. Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to also recommend, please, no clapping, no booing. We don't want any booing, but clapping too. We want to keep it moving, things moving along.
All right, well, that was a wife's privilege there to go before me. Good evening, my name is Roger Wood and I reside at 1200 Fruitland Avenue. I would like to thank council members Rochester and Ambrose for asking for the Fruitland East project to be on this meeting's agenda. The Fruitland East project, 3 traffic circles and 12 traffic calming features have been opposed by the residents since the 3 meetings in May of 2022. Those meetings in the chambers were the first time that many of the residents learned of the circles and features. As for citizen input, the city staff repeatedly emphasized at those meetings that the funding for the project was complex and could not be changed. The statement acted to curtail any residents' comments. On hindsight, how could proposals to reduce the cost of a project not be allowed? The residents attended the council meeting on January 22, 2024 to speak against the council approving the plans with the circles and features. Council members Ambrose and Raymond supported the residents. Mayor Nelson and council members Kale and Button did not. The residents attended the June 10, 24 meeting to speak against the awarding of the construction contract. This time, council member Raymond voted yes so he could later bring up the Fruitland according to parliamentary rules. A few residents attended the November 11, 24 meeting. At the end of the meeting, Councilman Ambrose asked that the Fruitland project, and I quote him here, project, be put on the December 9, 24 agenda. The Fruitland residents were ready to attend the December 9th meeting, until they read the posted agenda. The only item listed was the proposal by the city to move my sidewalk for $40,000. Therefore, the residents did not come to the meeting. The staff then successfully delayed putting Fruitland on the agenda for the next 4 meetings in January and February of this year. Finally, with the continued insistence of council members Ambrose and Rochester, Fruitland is again on the agenda. There is no logical reason for our street with light traffic, as shown in traffic studies conducted in 2016, to have all these congestion controls. Residents with the common features in front of their home lose 1 parking space and some value for their home. In fact, every resident will lose rather than gain value with this street upgrade. Parked cars do serve as traffic calming features, I might add. I and the many Fruitland residents in attendance again encourage the council to remove the unwanted circles and features from the project. As an aside comment, fire and police do not like traffic circles either, although we heard differently tonight. The circles slow their response time. The staff has come up with an astounding estimated cost of $300,000 to $450,000 to lower the construction cost by about $350,000. They also mentioned long delays to make the changes. The staff has shown that they will do anything to keep from changing this excessively expensive project. The contractor has done little if any work on the circles and features. Tonight is the time to remove them. Did anyone think about speed bumps? There is one at each end of the street. Many of the residents are in favor of more speed bumps. Think about it. How often do the beneficiaries of the project ask to make it less expensive? Thank you. Didn't quite make it.
No, you did good enough. Thank you. Okay, next card.
Is D. Heller?
Hello, I'm Dorella Heller. I live at 3320 Harbor Drive, Atwater. We have a street towards Winton, and it's called Camellia Avenue, and that was a thoroughfare. And they were coming that way, then they were going through the Harbor Drive and cutting off another stoplight, or stop sign, I should say. And once they put 2 stop signs in, it really slowed it down. We do not get the traffic, just 2 stop signs. And as we know, Fruitland Avenue is a combination of newer homes, older homes, really, really nice homes. And I think that we need to keep that. And by putting in these 3 within less than 7/10 of a mile, that it's going to cause some problems. And all of you, I'm sure, own homes or rent homes. And the number 1 priority, well, besides the woman likes, let's be honest, the woman likes the kitchen, the husband wants to make sure the garage is big enough, and they want to be able to park their cars. So you are eliminating a lot of those cars. And most families, they're starting to bring their kids back, live with them. I know where I live on Harbor, 5 cars are in 2 different places, and it's happening all over the place. And when you get that many cars, there's no room on Fruitland. So to make a long story short, until houses sell there, we will not know how much it's going to hurt the homeowner by having these roundabouts. And there will be a substantial, is that the right word? Anyway, difference, I believe, on the people that have hard times getting out of their houses and also where the roundabouts are so close to a house. They're going to have, there's going to be adjustment on the price for that. And I think real estate people and also appraisers, which I am, realize that there's going to be adjustment there, and we won't know until they start selling homes. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Dee.
By the way, I just want to say, I'm lucky I live in Kalisa, Rochester's council.
Next, we have John Rogers.
Good evening. My name is John Rogers. I live at 911 Fruitland Avenue. I'll keep my talk short so that people can have more time if they want it. I just want to express my disapproval on the traffic circles. For the same reasons that everyone else is giving, I don't think they will be any more effective than the speed bumps, and I'm sure they're more expensive than the speed bumps. That's, I guess, all I've got to do. We do appreciate you getting the Fruitland paved. That's the big improvement. But as for the traffic circles, I don't think they're necessary. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for your comments.
Next, we have Eddie Perez.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor,
Good evening.
Council. My name is Eddie Perez. I reside at 900 Fruitland Avenue. Seeing some of the issues that are happening that you're talking about, if you decide to pause on the west side or the east side of Fruitland, can I get my driveway back? With this storm coming up, I'm gonna have a moat in front of my house to get in and out of. But that being said, I'm not like John Rogers, who has the traffic circle right in front of his house, and some of my other neighbors that have it right in front of their house. I'm not affected by it. I'm just 100 yards down further from it, but my concern is for them, that they're not happy with it, and it doesn't bother me none, but they're not happy with it. And if they're not happy, I'm not happy. But the other thing I was going to bring to your attention is the entrance to Fruitland from Winton Way and Schaefer. A lot of the diesel trucks, they're not allowed on Fruitland, but they have to make their deliveries to Save Mart, and they have to turn onto Fruitland to be able to turn between Starbucks and the Sourdough Company. They have to pull in that driveway. When they're coming northbound on Winton Way, they have to use both lanes of Fruitland to make that turn. And they also utilize both lanes to make the turn to get into the parking lot. And in a couple occasions, and one occasion, my wife going to work early in the morning, a truck did not even stop, just made the turn and right in front of her, and luckily she stopped. No one was behind her. She was able to put it in reverse and get back so the truck can make that turn. The other problem is if the truck is courteous enough to stop, to let them go, she cannot see the other lane that's coming forward there because the diesel truck is blocking her view. And that's also makes her very uncomfortable and unsafe. So she in turn makes a right, goes to the vacant mortuary, turns into their parking lot, makes a turn, and then gets back on Fruitland to go back toward the freeway. So that's one of the issues on that end. On Schaefer Road, it's literally the bridge that goes over the canal. Just where you stop, the bridge wall and a utility pole blocks your view looking down that way, so you have to creep out a little bit to get past the wall to be able to see the cars coming. And that puts you out a little bit in traffic. And if you're trying to make a left on Schaefer Road, to
Sorry,
go-
the timer's up.
Oh, already, I'm sorry. But it's just safety for those. Thank you. I don't know if traffic light, three-way stop sign. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you for your comments.
Next, we have Judy Layton.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I'm a homeowner. I live at 1490 Fruitland Avenue. It's very hard for me to get up here and stand and speak, but I feel like you need to hear all of our voices. We have to be heard because your vote is going to affect all of us. Yes, we do have a few more cars on our street, but it's before school starts and when school is out. I feel with the stop signs that we have and speed bumps would slow the cars down. Also, there will be no parking with this project, no parking in front of any of our homes or around our homes. What about our family and friends when we all get together for special occasions or holidays? This is going to affect every resident on Fruitland. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Next is Linda Dash.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Council, Linda Dash, Atwater. Fruitland Avenue has always been a beautiful, beautiful road. Gorgeous homes, great landscaping, pride of the ownership, you can tell that. But I have a couple of questions. When was the last time that there was a traffic study performed performed on Fruitland? I'm just kind of curious. And also, a couple of council meetings back, I brought up to the council about the roundabouts that were proposed for Atwater High School. And actually, it was presented to the council. A comment was made that we were moonlighting, gaslighting, I don't know, whatever it was, not telling the truth. But I did some research and found out that on October 23rd of 2017, the council adopted a resolution number 291-17, to approve the capital improvement projects from 2017 to 2023. That, in turn, was presented to MCAG. And if you look at it, it's just as clear as the faces, all your little faces, the plans of putting the roundabouts in front of Atwater High School. So just want to remind you of that. And I sure hope that you'll put yourselves in the places of these folks here. I mean, you've ruined their homes. It's just not like what it used to be. Thank you.
Okay.
Next, we have Joe Weiss, or Weiss.
Good evening, everybody. Joe Weiss. I live at 633 Fruitland Avenue. I've been there for 17 years or so. It's a lovely neighborhood, and my family and I really enjoy it. We love it quite a bit. I'm not too happy with the construction that's been going on, as everybody else is not very happy with it as well. But also, I am concerned about the traffic circles that have been proposed. And the thing is, I come to you with 27 years of government service, and I worked for the city of Merced for quite a number of years, and was involved with some of the traffic calming measures there. And I remember speaking with citizens in the community about trying to get traffic calming measures installed in their home, on their streets, in their areas. And I got to tell you, this is it's amazing just how we've swung for the fences here on this one, because it was difficult to get this level, even just speed bumps or stop signs, things like that passed. But here, we've gone to an extreme, I believe, here. And I believe you said 12 bumpers that are coming in, and 3 traffic circles, and speed bumps. And it just seems like it's excessive, is what it seems like to me. And, you know, I've been a part of these things in the past under a different government. But I just don't understand why we went so far here. Clearly, there is an issue on Fruitland with speeding, with people not following the laws of the road. I see people run the stop signs all the time. Unless there's a law enforcement officer sitting there watching them, they run those stop signs. Officers can't be there all the time. That's the reality of it. It's difficult. Certainly doing all this extra stuff seems very excessive. I think there probably could have been a better use for those funds elsewhere. I'm sure there's other streets within the city of Atwater that could use a little tender loving care. We need some. I mean, the current traffic calming measures, which are primarily just potholes down Fruitland, are pretty effective. They slow me down, and I got to tell you, I drive down the middle of the road half the time too, because the construction is so horrible. The current state of it is very, very difficult. So it's a big challenge. So I urge you to consider a different plan than this. And I understand that you guys are answering, a lot of you, many of you, are answering for the actions of others in the past. Well, that's government for you. That's just how it is. And we all accept that when we decide to move into government. And so I'm not here to mistreat you, talk back to you or anything, but I just ask that you take a moment to look at that, and I think there's a better way. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Next is Cynthia Zorchak.
Hi, I'm Cindy Zorchak. I live at 1430 Fruitland Avenue, the corner of 5th and Fruitland. I was really amazed last summer when I had 2 of my neighbors come and tell me about these roundabouts. I was never informed of any of it. I went to my neighbor who lives on the corner of 5th and Fruitland as well, and they were never informed either. I was out of state when you had the meeting, and I sent my daughter as an advocate. Her name is Jamie Cruz. I don't know if you remember her, but she works for the city of Merced. She did contact the planning commissioner and everyone else asking for the traffic study that was done on that road and how these residents were informed. They never got back to her. So she never got a confirmation of when this took place, how it took place, and why it's taking place. I really oppose those roundabouts because it will affect my driveway. And I just want to let you know, I've recently retired last year, and I've had over 100 foster children in my home on Fruitland Avenue in a given time. And also, I would let them go out and ride their bikes, play out in their front yard. I was more concerned of somebody coming by and kidnapping one of my kids than ever having any kind of car accident out there or somebody doing something on the road. The road's never been an issue. My parents lived in that house for 30 years, and the grandkids would always play outside. It was the safest neighborhood, you know, very nice homes. And I'm very disturbed at the fact that we were not notified, never got to have a say in it. And when I called up, it would be like that everyone was given the information about that, and you had your right to speak before. No, as you heard earlier, they actually said, no, we were not notified. So I want to make that a point where, you know, that contract is void. I don't understand why you would have to pay all this money to re-engineer that road to get rid of those. Also, I've seen in Merced, because I worked at elementary school as a second grade teacher for over 25 years, and I've seen those calming stations or whatever you want to call them. I'd like to see a study on how many were already taken out, because I know we had one down the street from our school and it was removed. So are they causing more accidents? Are they really worth putting in on our road and, you know, hurting us? Most of us are senior citizens, you know, and I really am concerned about the safety of them being able to get down our road to get us help. I help my neighbor who's 92 years old behind us, and he has an ambulance the whole time. So again, very, very concerned and do not want that at all for our road. Thank you.
All right, thank you for coming.
Next is Diane Kahn.
Good evening. I appreciate the opportunity to speak tonight. I'll try to keep my comments brief. I know we addressed a lot of these things last month and in the past. I'm still in full objection of the traffic circles and I like the new word, the choker islands, because that's what it's feeling like right now. My husband met with the construction manager. His name was Izzy today, because we had a conflict with the contract we had with the city when they purchased the front of our property and the project maps that he had, and they did not match. He spent several hours with my husband today, and they were able to hopefully get it resolved. He was very helpful, and I appreciate his help on that matter. But I had made several phone calls to the number on the paper that was left on my front door and never received any phone calls back until I walked out to one of our wonderful construction workers and said, give me some phone numbers, and they happily obliged. But I do want to say thank you to Izzy. I guess he was the construction manager. He was telling my husband today that these choker islands are much larger than we have even realized, and each one will have 4 signs surrounding it. According to his map, we will have one almost directly out my front door. That is not something I want to look at every day, and it's going to take up the majority of the parking in front of my house. Visual concerns. It's going to create ongoing challenges for residents and visitors. And while I fully support efforts to improve safety and traffic flow, I believe there's better solutions. So I respectfully ask the council this evening to take a closer look at these plans and consider modification that preserve both the safety and the neighborhood livability. Thank you for your time and your commitment, and I really appreciate you having this meeting tonight so we can voice our concerns. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Great. That's the last speaker card I have.
Okay, the last speaker card. So at this time, if you would like to speak, you can please come to this podium. If you can identify yourself, that's helpful, but it's not a requirement.
Good evening, council members, mayor, city manager. My name is Ophelia Sandoval. I am the property owner at 555 and 577 Fruitland. It's 2 homes, 577 being the granny home, directly in the path of one of the traffic circles. It's the first property as you turn west onto Fruitland from Schaefer Road. I measured this afternoon. My daughter lives in that granny home. The stake is 15.5 feet from my grandson's window, and that's a safety concern. So I am completely opposed to the traffic circles. I believe there are other calming measures that we can use and would be much more cost effective than the traffic circles or the choker islands even. And besides that, I would appreciate the public outreach. Obviously, I'm not in agreement with the first option. If we go with option 2, I would greatly appreciate if you involve us, those affected, the residents of Fruitland Avenue. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, next. It's okay if you kind of line up there in the middle so you're all ready to go. Might make things quicker, I don't know. Dean?
Good evening. Thanks for the opportunity to speak again. I live at 1340 Fruitland Avenue, right in the middle. Considering the latest controversy concerning city planning and possible improprieties, I'm not talking about any issue that came to light tonight. I think the council needs to take a hard look at construction on East Fruitland. The high costs and the necessity of 3 traffic circles and 12 traffic chokers on 7/10 of a mile. Usually 1 traffic circle is placed every 1 to 2 miles on a road that has heavy congestion and accidents. We don't have that. Besides the high cost, traffic circles slow down emergency vehicles, pose an increased risk to I didn't realize this. They pose an increased risk to bicyclists. The traffic chokers reduce street parking, and both traffic circles and chokers will reduce the property value of adjacent homes. A new road is needed, drainage is needed, sidewalks are needed, but not chokers and traffic circles. For too long, there's been a distrust of city government, and it's time for this council to create a culture of integrity and honesty. The question that needs to be answered is how a city employee with strong ties to the engineering firm that designed the project never disclosed that fact at a public meeting. And it was said as it was said in the movie, All the President's Man, I'm dating myself now, follow the money. And if you can, save the citizens of Atwater thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands of dollars by revising this plan and getting rid of the chokers and the traffic circles. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Derek Morrison, and I'm fairly new to Atwater. I'm a homeowner. I'm on the corner of 3008 Laura Lane and Fruitland on the corner house. And I don't know, I hear a lot of these plans from 2016 and 15, and there's just a huge disconnect as far as everything that's going on. I have not heard anything as far as what was going on as far as the construction. I did speak with a city rep and spoke to him one time last year. I think it was maybe in October, September anyways. My side driveway, he said it was gonna get turned into a curb. It was gonna be a ramp that goes across the street. Anyways, he told me specifically that there was a possibility that they were gonna move the ramp up more so they wouldn't have to turn my driveway into a curb, and that he was basically gonna let me know and inform me, and I have not heard from him. Make a long story short, I'm definitely against the circle. My driveway has been sliced without any of my consent and my awareness as far as what was supposed to get told to me as far as everything. So I'm kind of like all over the place as far as what's going on, and nothing's been communicated to me at all, and I'm still kind of figuring out what's going on with my driveway, and I have not got no answers. So, but yeah, that's pretty much about it. I'm definitely against the circle. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Good evening, council members. My name is Amy Van, and I'm a resident at 1300 Fruitland Avenue. I am here to express my opposition to the elaborately expensive design of Fruitland Avenue. However, I am in support of the sidewalks, streetlights, drainage, and paving on our street. Our street is only 7/10 of a mile long. The need to install 3 traffic circles plus the other traffic calming features seem very unnecessary, and the placement of the 3 circles is questionable. The curb at the Capitola Circle is barely 20 feet, but obviously it's less than that, 15 feet from the front wall of their home. Councilman Kale repeatedly talks of safety, but I don't understand how the close proximity of this circle to the front room of their home is considered safe. The Fruitland residents have been raising concerns for a long time, and those concerns have largely fallen on deaf ears. Our own Councilman Kale repeatedly brings up an incident on our street where a resident's son was hit by a car. He fails to mention that when that happened, the boy was in the street, crossing down by the curve and not on the side of the road. Obviously, I don't want to see anyone hit by a car anywhere, let alone on our street. But in the 40+ years that I have lived on Fruitland, I can't think of a single incident where a pedestrian was hit or even a traffic accident has occurred. This street is mostly quiet, and more often than not, you're the only vehicle traveling, or at the most, 2 to 3 cars total. This is not Bellevue Road. I don't claim to be an expert on government projects, funding, and such, but I do understand this project was designated under the Measure V funding. I also understand that our interim city manager and community development director is a former employee of VVH, the company who engineered and designed this project. It seems peculiar to me that our community development director, who now oversees this project, used to work for the company who engineered and designed such an expensive residential street project. So some questions that I have. Why was Fruitland the only street singled out in the Measure V funding and given this elaborate and overly expensive design? How do you justify spending this money on one short street when there are dozens of streets within our city in dire need of much more repair? This doesn't seem physically responsible. And actually, where is our community development director tonight? I mean, I would think that with him overseeing this project, his insight and comment might be vital to some of the decisions that are made. As stated before, I'm not an expert on government projects and spending, but a little common sense says there are other solutions that would be better suited and less expensive for Fruitland. Isn't it unusual that the residents are asking for a less expensive design and are continually being dismissed by the staff? Thank you.
All right, thank you. Come on up.
My name is Anita Mason Lingenfelter. I live at 1427 Fruitland Avenue, a homestead since 1966. There is no doubt that Fruitland Avenue could use a facelift, so to speak, by repaving, repairing roads, walkways, and gutters. However, the one thing we don't need is a huge concern for it. The one thing we don't need is a huge concern for homeowners is placing 3 unnecessary roundabouts along with 12 calming features on Fruitland Avenue. This is such a waste of good money, money that could be used in the city elsewhere, and to possibly go to the Atwater Fruitland area, which is Atwater High Fruitland area, which is really needed. These features take away some of our privacy, particularly mine. My neighbors across the street, not to mention my neighbor down the street, will have a roundabout 10 feet from his porch. Now, how safe is that for his family, I ask you? These roundabouts are being placed on 7/10 of a mile. Really, council? Where are the police stats that show that this is a dangerous high-speed road? How many accidents have occurred since 2016? I think that the police department should provide us with those stats. I can only personally think of one, as Amy had said. Is this what you have based your opinion on? And to be truthful, I rarely see officers out patrolling our street. Why? Because there's not much activity. Having unnecessary roundabouts will slow down emergency responders. We could possibly lose a life due to the slowdown of the roundabouts. Now, that would be sad and devastating to a family. Let's speak about safety and privacy. I'm losing not only one end of my circular driveway, but technically I'm losing both because I have a roundabout in one and a stop sign at the other. I already have people using my driveway as a turnaround. This is on a daily basis, folks. My privacy, my safety, my peace of mind is a great value to me, but now I have to worry about how many accidents will occur at my place. Will somebody run right into my driveway and hit my house? The value of our homes will go down. This has been confirmed by several realtors in the Atwater Merced area. We have worked to build a home, to build equity in it, only to be less valuable due to the roundabouts that's about to be placed. The city of Atwater needs to think hard and reevaluate this plan, this process. Speed bumps, speed signs, or crosswalks enhancements, less maintenance for the future and better for the use of funding. In closing, I'd like to ask 2 questions. How many of you have a roundabout in your driveway? How many of you want it? We stand in unity, the Fruitland residents.
Okay, thank you. Yes, sir.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and City Council members. My name is Garrett Pedretti. I'm a resident of 1459 Fruitland Avenue. I have a couple of subjects I want to talk about this evening. First off is CEQA. Sections 15301 and 15303 are categorical exclusions for existing facilities and new construction or conversions. The City Council exempted this project from CEQA based on the recommendation from city staff that this project qualifies for the exemption. What this means is someone at the city decided to check a box one day and claim this project is minor. Widening the footprint of a road onto land that has not been paved over before and changing the topography of land is far from minor. 15301 says negligible or no expansion of existing or former use. This project is expanding the existing use by moving dirt and paving over land that currently could actually grow a crop on, most notably the land on the Heather Glen property. This section of 15303 pertains to small structures such as water mains, sewers, etc. Buildings and constructing new sidewalks fall out of the scope of this exemption. Without an environmental impact report and possible mitigation based on this report, the city has failed to show how this project does not violate CEQA. Number 2, the city has goals, 5 of them, from 2020 through 2025. You state on page 37 of this council packet the project is consistent with goals 2 and 6. This project would do the opposite. There has been no support other than unsupported comments from the city staff as to how calming features and traffic circles are safer than the alternatives. Goal number 6 is improved quality of life. With the overwhelming support to remove these features, how is the current project improving our quality of life for the residents of Fruitland? This project actually breaks goal number 3, promote transparency through communication. The city has been doing the opposite of being transparent, as each resident gets a different version of the story on how the project will affect them. In an attempt to show transparency, the city points out in October of 2016 there was a meeting, and then also in 2022 there were meetings. If the city was meeting goal number 3, the council packet for tonight would be hundreds of pages long with agendas, minutes, designs, as well as all the public input that the company, I believe it's VHH, received. Fast forward 2 years later, we have a project the city cannot show the public how they came up with at all. Maybe if the city cared about goal number 3 as much as 2 and 6, we would not be here today, and instead everyone would be celebrating a project that ensured safety, was transparent, and improved the quality of life for the city of Atwater. I urge you to pause this project to remove the traffic circles and calming features. And in closing, I would love for the construction company to give my stolen mailbox back to me since I don't know where it went. Thank you.
Okay.
Keith Pulaski, Atwater. I don't live on East Fruitland nor in the area. I'm not speaking for any people here, nor do I personally know anyone. I'll take that back. I saw 2 people I know that live in this area. Can you tell the citizens of Atwater when the last traffic survey was done on East Fruitland and the results from that survey? My understanding it was last done in 2017. Can you tell the citizens of Atwater how many speeding citations were written on East Fruitland in 2024 and 2025, and how many accidents? You have a representative from the police department here. You should be able to answer those questions, and I think it's important for you guys to know that information before you decide to continue with this project. I have these 2 circles in my area. I invite you all to come down to La Casa and Claremont Reserves and see if they work. They don't work. Especially kids going to school and leaving school. They'll drive over the top of them, or they'll act like they're in NASCAR and on a road course and see how fast they can get around them. I've invited Cale to come out there. I don't know if he showed up or not, so I'm inviting all you guys to come out there and see that these traffic circles don't work. Excluding Councilmember Rochester, the 4 of you voted to eliminate 2 police officer positions in the 24-25 budget. Had these vacant positions been filled, then perhaps the police chief could have made a traffic unit. Then a traffic unit could have gone out there if there was a problem with speeding. I commend Councilmember Rochester for standing up for the people who don't live in your district. You are what the city needs in a council member, one who will stand up for all the citizens, whether they live in your district or not. Thank you.
Well, we have the big dig in Boston, we have the high-speed rail, and we have the incompetence of the construction on Fruitland. What I'd like to go and say right up front, first of all, is that I don't live on Fruitland East, but I'm down on the Fruitland West end. I live on Village Woods, and every day I have to contend on driving down the most deplorable street I have yet to see in this city, down Fruitland. And today's, clown show in front of Atwater High was just the frosting on the cake. The one thing that I keep hearing is, down on my end, PG&E is doing some construction. We've been putting up with this for months, people. And the thing of it is this, we haven't seen anything. This morning, I'm driving out there, I get up to the corner of Village Woods and Fruitland, and what do I see? A backhoe making yet another hole out in the street. All these holes just add to the problem of nothing but a street that is almost impassable. I've been wondering, for these folks here, the property rights. What about property rights? That was a big deal when you guys were putting in approval for the storage facility over there by CHP. What about their property rights? Have you guys paid them under eminent domain for the loss of property? It doesn't sound like it. I would recommend to them a class action lawsuit if they all wanted to get together and go after this thing. This is ridiculous. The whole thing comes down to is that I've heard it said tonight that you come around and get around, Bellevue by going over there. Guess what? Traffic circles are not going to stop that. It'll still occur. Lastly, I want to say one last thing here about Roger Wood. Roger Wood has been a pillar of this community. Him and his brother Jimmy, they hired thousands of people in this community. He has done more to add to contributing to projects and things throughout this community, and for this council to come to him when he presented a very viable alternative plan and tell him, shell out $40,000, Roger, and we'll go ahead and move forward with it. That is the most insulting thing I think I have ever heard this body, this staff, anything come out of this council. Shame on you guys for that sort of thing, and God bless a person like Roger Wood for being in this community and being as supportive as he has for everything that you people have pushed, and now you're ignoring it. This is obscene. You people all need to be recalled is what it sounds.
Good evening,
Good
Mr.
evening.
Mayor and City Council. Rich Miller, 334 Silva Drive here in Atwater, also pastor, but I'm not wearing my pastor's hat tonight. I'm just a resident here in the city, and the Bible says that there's 6 things that God hates, 7 is an abomination, and I have things I hate. We all have things that we hate. Probably one of the things I hate the most is I hate it when I tell people something and it doesn't come true. This is now another meeting where I've promised some young people it's going to be a short meeting. I'm going to take you for some ice cream afterwards, and they've been here a while. So when I'm done with my comment, we're walking out because I owe it to them. With that being said, this is an important matter. And the second thing I hate is I hate waste. I think Mr. Vincent knows his predecessor. There was a time when the city had put up scaffolding so that the water tower could be repainted, and it had been left up way too long to where we paid $60,000 for that scaffolding to be left up longer. And I got up here and I said, hey, this is nonsense. That's more than I make in a year. So I hate waste, and I would hate for us to waste money. But there's a third thing I hate, and that is when people don't follow the path that they're supposed to, that they usurp authority. The Bible says that we're supposed to do things decently and in order. And tonight, I appreciate Councilmember Rochester doing all of the legwork that she did, because I've been coming to city council members city council meetings since 2019, and I did not hear any of this until tonight, what she shared. And to me, when it comes right down to it, as she said, if there were terms that were set forth that the city was supposed to, or that the people that lived on those streets were supposed to be notified, and they were not notified, and that it was changed so that the responsibility is no longer on the city. Now the people have to come, right? I think that's sort of laziness, to be honest. That's us shirking our responsibility. Mr. Wood can testify that I had church people out there on Fruitland last fall, knocking doors, inviting people to a special service at our church, and we were able to do it on a Saturday morning in a couple hours. So with that being said, if the terms were changed, it should have been brought back to the city council, and it should have been voted on, and it wasn't. And there was an incident several years back, and some of you were on the council when this happened, where some landscaping work was done, and then the landscaping business came and asked for us to pay up. And I got up here and I said, when we found out who authorized it, it was someone out of Public Works who did not have the authority to do so. We said, we're not paying that because it did not come to city council. So why would it be any different with this? If it was amended, it should have been brought back to city council. And the Bible talks about how that God visits the sins of the fathers on their children to 3 generations. What that's talking about is that the kids can make the mistake that the father made and their grandkids, etc. We don't have to continue making mistakes. Let's make sure that we do it right going forward.
All right, thank you. Okay, who's next?
Good evening, council.
Good evening.
City manager, everybody. Thank you for showing up tonight. My name is Harold Homan. I live at 1570 Fruitland Avenue, and in 19 days I will have lived there in the same house for 50 years. I've seen a lot that has gone on up and down Fruitland, and at one time there was a fair amount of traffic going up and down Fruitland, and I'm thinking about 20 years ago or more, and somebody decided, and I don't think it was approved, but put up 2 stop signs between Winton Way and Schaefer Road. And traffic changed. The speed of the traffic slowed down, and it has been wonderful as far as I'm concerned since then. As far as the traffic circles are concerned, they're not really a circle. They're on one street with a side street coming in from one direction. Normally, you would see a traffic circle with a four-way in a four-way intersection, which makes more sense than I'll call it a three-way intersection. When you're, and I think if I'm correct, that 5th Street is where a circle is going to go, not on Chardonnay. I hope that the council, as they think about the street, think about the roundabouts, will come to the conclusion that they really are not necessary. They're not going to really solve a traffic problem if there is one. And you call it the choker islands. There's no need for those. The traffic, as far as I'm concerned, flows very nicely up and down Fruitland and has for years and years and years. So please take those 2 things into consideration. I think that as far as the construction is going, we have to live with the problems. They get worse before they get better. You know, there's all kinds of chuck holes, et cetera, out there, but that'll all be resolved when we have a new street. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Harold.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, council members. I come to you as a resident of Heather Glen. As you know, Heather Glen is a direct feeder onto Fruitland. It is our only access in and out of the neighborhood is Fruitland. No matter what direction you guys choose to make the project go today, I come to you after talking with my neighbors with a request, and the request is communication. And I'll give you the perfect example. Today at 3 o'clock, I had to go home to get my son's tennis racket to take him to tennis. I decide, well, I know there's construction. I'm going to try to go up Schaefer and make the turn on Schaefer. The road is closed. So I come around and I decide I'm going to go on Capitola to try to get into my neighborhood. The road is closed. The construction worker there told me, you have to go to Laurel and come around. And I said, no problem. So I drive up Manzanita, I come up Laurel, there's another road closed sign. The construction worker attempted to tell me that I could not make a turn from Laurel onto Fruitland to get to my house. So basically I was being told, there's no way to get to your house today. As these projects continue, we just need open communication and to let the residents know when these closures are going to happen and how we can try to get around them and what our rights are in order to be able to get around them, because my neighbors are all saying the same thing. The difficulty getting to our house, while we understand there's a project, there's going to be delays, we need to be told when and how those are going to affect us. Thank you.
Corey.
Hello, my name is Ashley and I live at 1033 Fruitland. I'm here to express my concerns about the proposed traffic circle that is planned to be placed at the end of my driveway. I understand the goal of this project is to improve safety in the neighborhood, and I truly appreciate the city's efforts to improve our community. However, I have some serious concerns about how this traffic circle will impact not only my safety, but also the convenience and accessibility of my property. I worry about the safety implications of driving up and over the circle, which has been suggested as a solution for me when I need to get in and out of my driveway. While this may be an option for me, I have serious doubts about the safety of this approach. If I'm expected to drive over the circle, what's to stop others from doing the same? This could create confusion and lead to accidents, especially in situations where people may not be familiar with the new setup or may not anticipate vehicles navigating the circle in this way. With all due respect, I'm asking the council to reconsider this plan and to explore alternative solutions that promote both safety and accessibility. There are other options that could maintain a traffic flow while not creating the difficulties and risks that come with placing a traffic circle at the end of a residential driveway. I believe a more thoughtful approach to this issue could benefit everyone in the neighborhood. Another issue I'd like to raise is the lack of communication with the residents about these plans. It feels as though this decision was made without consulting those who will be directly affected. As residents, we weren't made aware of these plans until they were already in the final stages of planning. When we were eventually notified, it wasn't through official channels, but rather by word of mouth. Clear communication and input from the community are essential to ensure that infrastructure changes actually meet the needs of those living here. I strongly believe that better engagement with residents could have resulted in a more thoughtful and effective solution. I'm not opposed to improvements that enhance safety, but I do believe there are better ways to achieve these goals without creating such an inconvenience or risk for the residents directly affected. I kindly ask that you consider alternatives and take the time to reevaluate this proposal. Thank you for your time, and I appreciate your consideration.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else? Now's your time.
Good evening. Adam Reed, 1520 Fruitland Avenue. One thing real quick. My son was the one that was hit on Fruitland. Some people may not think it's a big deal, but I wonder if it was their child, if they would think it was a big deal. Even though it was a minor incident, he did have to receive treatment from an ambulance for bumps and bruises, and he had he put his arm in a sling for about a week. That was about 8 years ago, and at that time, I advocated for the Fruitland project as it was in the infancy of the design and stuff. And I communicated because I was on the Planning Commission at the time, and I had, I think it was the Community Development and Resources Commission at the time. I talked to Scott McBride about it, the director at the time, and I advocated for speed humps. Along with advocating for speed humps from Scott McBride, I also talked to my neighbor Paul Creighton at the time, and with his help, we were able to get the one speed hump put in. And at the time, I was told that was going to be a test because there was concerns about the possibility of having to take it out because neighbors wouldn't like the noise and things like that. Since then, I don't think anybody's got a problem with it. I don't think there's many complaints about it. So I've never been a proponent of the roundabouts. I've been very clear that my goal is pavement and sidewalks. And then it would be traffic calming, and that would be in the form of speed humps. So okay, sorry, I lost clock. So to this point, it was brought up tonight. Chris Holm, the city manager, said that all of a sudden now we're starting to get complaints about this. This has been ongoing. It's been ongoing since Paul Creighton took the plans and marked them up to remove the speed circle or the circles many years ago. It's been every single council meeting that that this has come to for approvals. It has been brought up that there's concerns about it, and it seems like the residents are not being listened to. Whether I agree with them or not, which I think on the round or the traffic circles I do, they don't seem like they've been listened to. So it would be nice if they would be listened to. They are the constituents, as Chi-Chi would define for everybody. So it would, please take them into consideration. Doing development in the city of Atwater, whenever we get a project approved, we're given 2 years to get the project moving, or else our entitlement expires and we've got to start over. So I'm not sure why you can shelf a project for so long and not expect that residents are going to change, council members are going to change, staff members are going to change, and not go out and seek new community input.
Thank you. Good evening.
Gary Gamboni, 1033 Fruitland.
Can you lift the microphone up a little bit more there?
Is that better?
Yeah, thank you.
1033 Fruitland, Gary Gamboni. My main driveway goes right into that roundabout. I am a handyman. I drive a trailer quite often. Probably blocked a lot of these people getting in, When you back up a trailer, you don't always get it the first time. You kind of go back and forth. All good most of the time. Sometimes you get a car, it freaks you out a little bit. You don't want to hold anybody up or not. Trying to get this trailer in and out of my house, I was told by the gentleman that you can go up over the curb. I asked if, my suspension messes up in my trailer or vehicle, so I was going to get paid by Atwater. Oh, no. So this roundabout, getting in and out of my house, I come 10 times a day. It's going to be crazy. Trying to back up this trailer around this roundabout, cars coming from my left and right, it's going to be pretty crazy to get in and out. That's all I got to say. So, thank you.
All right, thanks. Okay, anybody else? Thought I saw more hands raised earlier, but it's okay. Okay, seeing nobody else coming forward, then back on the right page here. I'm going to close public comment. Okay, any council questions? I know you do. I know you do. Let's start down here. Danny, you
I'll try to keep them short for you. Couple of questions on pricing, if we happen to have that. What would be the charges for one of the traffic chokers, as well as one of the traffic circles?
So I don't know off the top of my head, but I do know that our engineering group helped us understand the difference in cost, because if we asked that question, what would the cost or savings be if the existing plan were to change and the traffic circles were replaced with asphalt and the choker islands were also replaced with asphalt? There would be a cost savings of approximately $90,000, and that was included in the $300,000 to $450,000 figure that I shared earlier. That savings was included in that. Thank you.
John? No, okay. All right, nothing. Question? Nick, go ahead.
My first question is for Chief Ayuso.
regarding ambulance response times versus CAL FIRE's response times in our city. So I did hear you say that there would be a slight delay if the traffic circles were to be placed on Fruitland Avenue. What I'm interested to know is when CAL FIRE responds to ambulance, calls for ambulances, does CAL FIRE typically arrive before the ambulance?
Typically here we do. Just depends on what the location of the ambulance is, and unfortunately just due to limited paramedics, it's kind of a little delayed at times, but we do tend to get a pretty good response in Atwater City from the medics.
So just going back to the fact that I know that you've talked about you guys saving lives before yourselves, before the ambulance was able to get there. So wouldn't it be fair to say that every second counts in a response time?
Absolutely. I'm not saying that every second doesn't count. By answering my question earlier, I'm just stating the facts. It's not anything based off of opinion. It's just simply treat it the same as we do a red light. And if we come up to a red light, driving code 3, lights and sirens, we have to slow down and abide by laws and request for the right of way. If we hit 5 red lights going across town versus green lights, we're still slowing down at those intersections. I hope that kind of answers your question. Again, does it slow down? Yes, they're designed to slow traffic. They're going to slow emergency vehicles. However, the overall response time, I don't see it being drastic. We're talking a few seconds, and I agree, yes, every second matters. That's why we pride ourselves in responding in a timely fashion, no matter what we're doing.
Thank you. My next question is in reference to the construction. I know that Phase 3, the contract amount was for $6.6 million, and that's just for Phase 3 construction. And I know that we set aside $626,000 for change orders, factoring in 10%. So how much have we spent in change orders thus far?
I believe it's close to $150,000, and I'm looking over for Justin if you have a better answer for that.
Well, the change order right there, yeah, it was a force account for $150,000. We haven't got to $150,000 yet, but we are still compiling some change orders from earlier in the project. So it's going to go up a little bit, maybe another $80,000. So probably be like $160,000.
So we do have funds available from that perspective, since we set them aside.
There's still contingency available.
Thank you, Justin.
So my perspective still hasn't really changed, is that something is needed to be done, but this project's always been excessive. But what really gets me was the contract with VVH, and you guys do a great job, so it's not on you guys, but having city staff direct you guys to amend the contract, but then them not bring it back to us, just really doesn't sit well with me. So that's all I have to say.
Okay, so.
Mayor, I got one more question, if you don't mind, before you start. Thank you.
Go ahead.
All right, so just a quick question for city manager, and I'm aware that you weren't here back in 2014 when this was approved back in January, but if I'm not mistaken, when we had a large turnout of Fruitland residents then, and they asked for us to split the project in half, we were told by staff that we could not. So what changed that we have that option today?
Split, sorry, could you elaborate, please?
For the west and east side of Fruitland, we had to approve that as a whole. We couldn't just move forward with the west portion of Fruitland. We had to do both. So what changed now that we can potentially do that?
I'm sorry, I don't remember the conflict about not being able to split it. But right now before us, we see that it's important to finish the pavement, really on both sides of Winton Way. And hearing the public talk about the traffic circles and the choker islands and focusing on those on the east side of Fruitland Avenue, but not having as much, it doesn't sound like there was as much concern from residents on the west side, that it's important for us to, because the road is in disrepair right now, and we need to finish the pavement as quickly as we can.
Let's get a little clarification on it. Michael, are you able to answer that question, why west and east are all one project rather than separate projects? And can they be split?
Yes, they can be split. I'm not aware of any reason why they couldn't be.
And do you know why they were split or not split originally?
I do not know why they weren't split.
Okay, that's cool. Thanks. Appreciate that. Are you done, Danny? Okay. So I have a question or two here also. So if we were to go with option 2, we already know the estimated extra cost being around $450,000, $500,000, whatever. Just throw a number out there, I guess. But I'm concerned about if we did that and stopped George Reed from doing their work, what would be the next steps in that? And with the re-engineering and then time to restart the project again, what would be that timeline?
I can start answering the question, and then maybe we could have maybe Brian Kroger help us with the timeline. He's a construction project manager that's contracted with the city. But basically, we would want to, assuming if we were to go with option 2, begin on the engineering as quickly as possible, come back in 2 weeks to City Council to approve up to that amount that would be verbally agreed to or directed at tonight's meeting with an updated contract. And I can read that language again if anyone's interested in incorporating that into their motion. But the engineering would come first. Notification to George Reed to demobilize, and I mean, I'm sure that they have other projects going on, but we'd have to work on that. And as far as the timing for the engineering, if I could ask Brian if you have any estimate on that. Thank you.
Brian Kroger, construction manager by contract for the city. So it would take a couple weeks for the redesign once we went that way. So assuming 2-3 weeks for VVH to redesign it. We can suspend them. I don't think we'd shut them down 100% with your guys' permission. There's still some underground pieces that need to get finished. The stuff in front of the high school would want to proceed with that and get that all completed and leave it to just these roundabout areas. So the next city council meeting after they're done design, if we could get agreement on and notice to proceed from the council, we can work on getting George Reed back to work on that section, hopefully without losing them at all. If we tell them go away and we don't know when you're gonna go back to work, we don't have that date dialed down, they're gonna fill up their crews and we're gonna be a little bit at their mercy trying to get them to come back to the project site. So you do have some authority as a city, you got a little bit of a hammer, but still you'd be looking at another couple weeks probably for them to mow in once we gave them notice to proceed to return. So you could lose 2 months very easily if you shut them down and they leave the site.
And you think it could be re-engineered in that time frame, that shorter time frame?
Yeah, I mean, VVH is the designer. I've worked with their engineers before. They're pretty fast. They're pretty good. It'd be cooking. But yeah, It would be possible.
Yeah, I don't mean to be a skeptic, but I know government projects always take much longer than
Sure.
when I'm initially told, oh, it won't take very long, and then a year later, there's a disconnect between what's not very long and what actually is reality. So I have some concerns about delaying the project, because while it's being delayed, what happens with the condition of the road as it is today?
That's why I would advocate for not shutting them down completely. There is a lot of areas we've dug up for underground that need to be closed back up. If you guys are going to suspend George Reed in a way where they would demobilize, I would advocate that you guys actually finish paving the roadway with permanent HMA to alleviate a lot of the maintenance issues that are gonna happen. Once you lose a contractor on site, unless you've got a maintenance crew that's ready to go pave, you're asking for a world of hurt out there. Bad weather, or something opens up, now you got, the road unraveling on you, and it can keep going in the extent of the trenches that are out there.
Okay, and since you're up here, so you're the on-site, do we have an on-site project manager?
I'm not full on site.
You're not on-site, okay. So we need to do something about the disconnect between George Reed and the residents and what's going on there. That's not acceptable.
We are working on it. So Izzy's my guy. He is on site. He's the inspector out there working with them. We have talked to George Reed about some of their notifications once Chris brought up some complaints to us. So we are continuing to push on them and getting more actively involved in the notifications.
Okay, thank you. Okay, let me finish, please. When was the last traffic study done, Michael? Do you know? Not to put you on the spot, but when?
Yeah, Jose,
when was the
thank you.
last traffic study done?
Yeah, so the last engineering and traffic survey for Fruitland was in 2015. That's when the speed limit ordinance was completed and passed by the council. That's when we changed the speed limit from 35 to 30. The last time we did any type of always stop warrants or volume collection data for Fruitland was in January of 2017, I believe. But as a lot of us use the term traffic study to like a more holistic type of traffic study, those haven't been necessarily completed. They've been spots here and there, like the last time the Traffic Commission requested numerous always stop warrant studies throughout the city. I think they had listed like 51 intersections throughout the city back in 2015. And they had listed other things, but since then, I'd say that's it.
Okay, thank you, Jose, appreciate that. And then one last question for Justin, I imagine, because you handle all this stuff. So if we stopped our work on Fruitland, and then we needed more money later on, we have other projects, say for example, Olive, from Winton Way all the way to the city limits. We'd shut that project down and take the money from there, or how's that process work?
No, we won't shut Olive down. I still plan on bringing Olive to council, maybe next council meeting. There's some other SB1 funds we can move around. We could try to make it work.
Okay, thank you.
And the contingency, updating it, Councilmember Rochester, it's actually closer to like 275 right now that we've used. So we have about half left. So if we needed to go over that contingency amount, we would have to request more funds in a budget amendment or do a budget transfer.
Okay, thank you, Justin, appreciate that. Okay, questions, comments?
My question's for Mr. Krieger again. If you can come up for a second, yeah. Oh, and when you answer, can you talk more to the microphone? I guess people are having trouble.
Okay, better?
So, yeah, I think so. My question is about public notice.
Okay.
And the timeline process, since that seems to be an issue. Is that another step that we have to go through as well once VBH is done?
As far as, I guess I'm not understanding the question.
Well, either one of you guys, public notice as far as this?
As far as
If it's re-engineered.
engineering, redoing the project, I think it would be wise for the city to notify everyone, at least by mailers, putting it on our website, and using social media at the minimum, to get the word out about a change to the project. Oh, and is your question about increasing the time?
Just more on the timeline.
Oh, the
'Cause
timeline.
The way, he's talking, it sounded, great in government terms, but, you add these other things in there, you don't know
I mean,
how long it'll take.
if at the council's pleasure, if the council wants to do option 2, I think it would be wise to immediately notify residents, and including those areas that may be off the 300-foot normal threshold, because if you live on Chardonnay, for example, you're using Fruitland Avenue, so this affects you too.
So Brian, are you asking like an open house again, like a public input?
No, not at all. I was just public notice, because that seems to be the biggest issue here. And I didn't know where in the timeline, if that would, slow it down if we're trying to expedite the process.
Usually we give like 7 days notice, 5 to 7 days notice on, resuming work, something like that. But we would be tracking that pretty closely and getting out there with the contractor.
I do have another question. It's probably both you and Michael. You had stated that you believe the re-engineering would take around 2 weeks. Is that 80 hours?
That would be more for Michael. I looked at him and got numbers before I came up here. So I'm construction, he's the design.
Right, I get it.
So my answer to the question was it depends on the extent of the direction that council issues for scope changes. That it could be 2 to 4 weeks, and that would not be one person. That would be an all-hands-on-deck effort to expedite this.
So what if we elected to eliminate the circles and eliminate the chokers and instead use alternative traffic calming measures? How long would that take approximately to re-engineer?
Let me make sure I understand you right. Remove the chokers, remove the traffic circles, and use some other traffic calming measure, but we don't know what it is right now.
Correct. Maybe a speed hump or maybe a sign.
Yeah, with the looking at grading and possible drainage changes to the intersections, probably 3 weeks, ballpark.
And what I'm looking at when I look at the contract, it appears that for a senior engineer, civil engineer, we're paying about $215 per hour.
Probably, yeah.
So what's the math? How many hours times $215 per hour? I wasn't a math major. Criminal justice, so bear with me. Do we know?
I really don't know what the question is, but we could give you a good estimate on that when we know what the extent of the scope changes are. I can't do that off the top of my head.
Thank you. 25,800. So 25,800, and then we still have money set aside with George Reed. Some, I understood Director Vinson to say we have about half of that left. I'm not at all interested in canceling George Reed's progress or stopping that from, going on. I feel like there are other things certainly they could be doing versus the circles and the other, while you're or someone is working on alternative drafts. I did have another question for City Manager Holm. I recall in the summer when we moved about $7 million in ARPA money over, and we decided, this was in the summer, the council approved it. It was about $7 million. And I'm wondering if potentially we could use those ARPA funds that we moved out of ARPA. I believe you cited that you were going to use them. We weren't going to finish the Osborne project on time, so we were going to set those funds aside.
Yeah, I do recall, I think it was around October that we were talking about this, and we can examine that and look into that for sure. I don't know if that's possible, but I'll work with staff and we'll find out.
I thought we moved the money from ARPA for the park because we couldn't allocate it or, that's the wrong word, but obligate it in time before the end of the year.
Correct.
So now is it too late to?
It may be, but we'll look into it. We'll see what's possible.
All right. Yes, I'm not, that's a very good point. And thank you, that was going to be my next question. So normally when we do public notices by mail, do we send out certified mail or we just send it out regular snail mail?
Regular mail.
So we don't really have any proof that, I mean, I just bring this up because in my conversations with several of you this past week, I've heard that we never heard anything about this. How long have you lived here? I lived here 13 years. Well, it seems to me somebody should have heard something in 13 years. But then again, I haven't been here that long, so. So my point being that if we're going to do, I mean, there's nothing wrong with going door to door either. I think that's a lot more effective because then you got eyes to eyes when you do it, assuming somebody's home. And you can leave it there. Multiple means, but let's don't not think about door to door. Somebody, I know, granted, somebody's got to go do it, but you know.
Oh, that makes sense. Thank you.
Well, you know, public comment Shelley's already done with. That's why I encourage people to. Well, shame on him.
I agree. So, and I was a good friend with him, I thought. And the fact that we weren't notified, we really weren't notified.
Yeah. Well, I'm not saying that you weren't. I'm not saying that. Please don't put words in my mouth. I didn't say that. I'm curious why it's that way. So, okay.
I can make a motion.
Yeah, you know, I have something I'd like to say, and that is that tonight I'm realizing that some of the things that I was told were not true. Greatly, I was told that everybody was notified. And then to be told, oh no, the city said no. Because ever since I've been told that, I've been telling everybody, I'm sorry it got lost in the mail or you took it and threw it away, but everybody should have been notified. Everybody was. I'm really disappointed. I really am disappointed. I was also told that the calming measures were part of the money that we are getting. If we don't have the calming measures, we'll lose some of that money. Apparently, that's not so. One of the questions I have is, if we decide to table this, two things. First off, we're going to re-engineer it, then we need their input. If it's completely get rid of calming circles, and that's what their input is, then, okay, I'm okay with that. As long as, and I've always said this, that my main focus on this project is preventing people from getting hurt. But that includes auto accidents or anything with a child or a bicycle or any of that. That's always been my major focus. And I guess my question is, do we have a legal issue or a possibility if we, this whole time, been saying this or being told this and we're making decisions off of that, are we in any liability, legal liability? I know there's always a chance that could be, but
Yeah, I mean, if the question is, are we in legal liability for getting wrong information? I mean, generally, no. I don't think that's the issue. I think the issue is, though, that as city council and staff, you hold people accountable for giving wrong information. That's the issue.
so if we remove all the traffic circles and calming measures, and we repave, and somebody's riding their bicycle down the road, and the person comes flying through there and hits them, can they legally come after the city by saying, here you had the calming measures, and this is what happened?
That would be the argument someone could make. It's, entities get sued all the time for various theories, and then they use various reasons to argue it. What you want, whatever decision you make, you want to be supported by sound engineering judgment. So you don't want to make arbitrary and capricious decisions from an engineering perspective, but assuming we have a duly licensed engineer that does this and exercises sound engineering judgment, and that it's built according to the designs that the engineer drew, there's also design immunity as well. So it's not true that, someone can make that argument, and someone probably will try to make an argument like that because there's dollars on the other side of that for that plaintiff. But the reality is, you want to make sure that the decisions that are made in the field are based on sound engineering judgment. And so if it's somebody that doesn't have that title, doesn't have that authority, and is doing something in the back of the napkin, yeah, that would concern me. But if an engineer's doing it and exercising sound engineering judgment, which our engineers would, it brings less concern.
Okay, thank you.
Any other comments? Done. Go ahead.
So I would move to initiate a formal review of VVH Consulting's performance under their contract, specifically regarding their public outreach obligations. This review should determine whether VVH Consulting has met the required outreach standards and fulfilled its contractual commitments. If deficiencies or breaches are identified, appropriate actions, including potential remedies or contract termination, shall be considered. I would also move to pause construction on the segment of Fruitland Avenue between Winton Way and Schaefer Road to provide sufficient time to re-engineer the project to exclude traffic circles and choker islands identified and approve supplemental funding at a future city council meeting. I also believe that we as a city should be better in involving our residents in decision-making processes that directly impact them. And so they should be included in meetings, and those plans should then be brought back to council for a formal decision. That was long, I know.
Yeah, it was. Did you get all that, Janelle?
So I used the recommendation with some additional requests.
Can we do those one at a time?
The motion is one motion that includes both elements. So if there's no second, then someone else can make a motion. But if there is a second, that's the motion you have to vote on, unless somebody does a motion to amend or something like that, or substitute motion.
Just like some clarification. You mentioned stopping the project. You want to pause all construction?
No, I went with the recommendation from Winton Way to Schaefer, which is what's written by City Manager Holm. I wouldn't recommend ceasing on Fruitland West.
I understood a motion, if I may clarify, to be essentially option 2, plus the motion regarding a review of VVH's performance under the contract. That's correct, right, Councilmember Rochester?
Yes.
Okay, so again, I'm sorry for just trying to make sure I understand exactly what's being presented here. So any of the construction that's happening on the east side of Fruitland right now, whether we have open ground or anything, we're putting a complete pause to that? We're not going to finish any of that with your motion?
I'm not sure. I would assume we would need an answer to determine if we could continue. I was looking at the city manager's recommendation and trying to determine, I don't know if there are other things that George Reed could do, and I'm not opposed to that, but I certainly think that we stop with any circles or chokers, and that while that is being reworked. But I just, as Councilmember Raymond stated, I have some concerns about the fact that someone arbitrarily made the decision to omit public outreach and amend that contract without council's approval. And I've always been taught that if it's not in writing, it didn't happen. And so the fact still remains that we have this contract, and the amount for that public outreach was $7,500, and it didn't happen. So.
If I may, Mayor, ask for clarification. So, Councilmember Rochester, is your motion basically, I mean, putting what is written as an option 2 aside for a moment, is your goal in your motion to move forward with the project as a whole in the best way possible, including doing re-engineering work to remove the traffic circles and choker islands, but whatever other work can be done to proceed forward as long as it doesn't interfere with removing those items?
Correct.
Okay.
But I also believe we should review the contract with VVH, because if we're going to pay VVH additional funds to rework this project and they are in breach of their contract, then I feel like there are certain remedies that we could probably work out there financially.
Okay, understood.
Do you understand?
That is the motion on the floor. You have to either second or vote on as a whole unless there's any other alternative motions made or motions to amend.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second.
The second was by Ambrose, thank you. So motion by Rochester, second by Ambrose.
Well, let's see if there's any other further discussion
Thank you.
by the council.
Thank you.
Brian?
Yeah, so the question then would be, if they're going to do a review of the contract, then all construction and engineering has to stop, correct? VVH can't be engineering it if you're going to cancel their contract. That's the concern I have.
No, the motion is to review the contract to determine if there are any deficiencies that were, or that VVH did not meet the standards of the contract. And then I believe we could have discussion on how to remedy those issues, but I would rely on the city attorney to.
Yeah, and I'm happy to take a look at that. I could just tell you that it sounds like it's been 8 years since this transaction occurred, so we have a statute of limitations issue right off the top. Number 2, if it was city staff that indeed directed him, VVH has a strong equitable defense. It's called the doctrine of promissory estoppel, because if they relied on oral modification by a staff member that had apparent authority, that's also going to be an issue. So I don't think from right here we know enough to say that there was a breach, and if there was, again, if the other party to the contract asked you to do this, VVH may have a strong equitable promissory estoppel defense. But we'll review it. and we can obviously take that into consideration. We have to find out when this happened, how it happened, who said it, all of those things.
I believe there was an amendment in 2023, a number 2 amendment with VVH.
But I think from what I heard, that there was never a written amendment to what, I don't think there's a written amendment to what was described, is my assumption.
Yes, I'm just talking about the statute of limitations. There
Yeah,
was
but-
another contract
Right.
that was written and signed in 2023.
Right, but if you're forcing a change to the contract, you're gonna go to the contract that was in existence at the time. Just because there was an amendment doesn't reach back all the way to all of the previous iterations of the contract. You're gonna go to whatever contract was applicable at the time.
Any further comments, discussion down here?
I guess, did we ever get your question answered? So would the construction have to stop if there's some sort of a breach or?
I look at this as a side issue that could be addressed at a parallel path, because really if there's some kind of resolution to be had, I don't know why they couldn't continue to reevaluate it, and if there's some kind of contract dispute, we address that at the same time. Those are two different issues.
Okay, thank you.
So are we pausing the work that they're doing until the engineering's done? Or are we going to say, continue what you're doing until and re-engineer it? I'm really confused as to whether it's going to be.
If I may, Mayor. So I believe the motion is to continue to the extent possible without interfering with the plan to change the plans to remove the traffic circles and the choker islands.
Okay, how are they supposed to know that? Are they going to be in direct contact with these guys, or?
We'll all be communicating with each other and working on this, all hands on deck sort of thing.
Okay,
Yeah.
I hope that actually happens. I truly do. And then I hope nobody tells us it is there and it's not. Okay? All right.
Yep, and I will agree with what John just said, because I think we were both sold a bill of goods along this whole process here, because I was told also that if we stopped the project, we'd lose the funding and other things that came along. People were notified, but apparently they weren't, et cetera, et cetera. So I don't know where I was going with that, but we did find out when the last traffic study was done. My only thing, I guess, would be I would have preferred to see the motion bifurcated, separate motions, not all in one. But in regards to including better public input, I totally agree with you with that. I just want to. I'm glad that people are here because it's on your street, so you're concerned. But I would encourage you to be concerned about other parts of the city as well. When we had the general plan update workshops, I think we had 3 workshops last year. There was a handful of people that showed up. I mean, this is the blueprint for Atwater for the next 20 years. So that's possible. That's possible. That's possible. But the notice did go out. But anyway, please keep up this level of engagement with the city. I'd appreciate that. Okay. No more. No, that's fine. Okay, more comments?
Well, I'd like to amend the motion to separate the 2 items. 3 items. So it's a lot.
There's only 2 items.
Yes, I was right.
The third was just commentary. Yeah.
I agree with Mr. Raymond.
So the
Keith, please. A little bit of decorum here, please.
After the second is discussion, and that's what we're doing.
So you have a motion and a second. If you have to either phrase it in terms of a substitute motion, I don't even know how you would do this, to be honest.
I should not have said that.
Yeah.
I'm okay with it the way it is. You know.
You can ask Councilmember Rochester if she wants to make a friendly amendment. Otherwise, I would just go with the motion that we have on the floor.
That'd be easier. We don't need to complicate it.
We'll go with the motion on the floor. It's fine.
Just want to, again, I want to make it clear, construction's not going to stop. We're going to continue on. Our city attorney has cleared that up, that these two things can happen simultaneously. You can look at a contract and make some determinations. They can rework the plan while construction is still taking place, and we can engage with our community and get their input, all the while this construction is happening. So I would stick with the motion the way that it's written.
Okay, I think we're done chatting about it here, so roll call, please.
Are we good? Okay. So we have a motion by Rochester, second by Ambrose. Kale?
Yes.
Ambrose?
Yes.
Raymond?
Yes.
Rochester?
Yes.
Nelson?
Yes.
Motion passes.
So we're not quite done, we're almost done. So if you just hold on, that'd be good. Now we're on to comments from the public.
This time, any person may comment on any item which is not on the agenda. You may state your name and address for the record, however, it's not required. Action will not be taken on an item that is not on the agenda. If it requires action, it will refer to staff and are placed on a future agenda. Please limit comments to a maximum of 3 minutes.
Okay, these are for items not on the agenda. So under the Brown Act, members of the public must address the city council as the legislative body of the city, not to other members of the public or staff. I'm now opening public comment. Go for it.
Rudy Ibarra, 585 Village Circle Drive. I'd like to start off by saying, Chris Holmes, thank you for taking the time out of your day not to respond to my email or even acknowledge it. On that note, the reason I'm here is to find out why permits take so long in the planning department. If I could get a food permit in 2 days for the ice rink, but it doesn't only benefits the city, that costs me nothing, but then it takes up to 3 to 6 months and costs me $2,000 when it doesn't benefit the city of Atwater. Well, that questions a lot. So I started to investigate that and realized employees like Greg Thompson, former VVH employee, spent more time at the bar and various places on city time. Then doing his job. A USB drive with evidence of Greg Thompson drinking and driving in city vehicle on city time, abusing his power to have a subcontracted employee from VVH, Scott Roloff, drive him to and from the bar was given to a private investigator, city manager, and 4 city council members, and was not given to the mayor. As of today, it's my understanding that Greg Thompson, former VVH employee, is still employed and was not reprimanded for his actions, but was given a paid vacation, aka administrative leave. Is this why permits take so long in the city of Atwater? When is the manager, city manager, or law firm BBK going to actually do something? If you guys responsibly to protect the citizens of the city of Atwater, I have 6 kids and I question allowing them to grow up here in the city of Atwater that is ran so poorly. When is action going to be taken?
All right, thank you. Anybody else? Keith?
Keith Plesky, Atwater. On July 22nd, 2022, Council voted and approved a resolution known as Measure B. The people were told by the Measure B committee, City Council, and city administrators that more police officers would be hired. We have since found out that is not true when you voted to eliminate 2 police officer positions. The ordinance, which is completely different than what was written in the resolution, the mail flyers, the city presentations, and even read by the mayor at the July 25th, 22 council meeting, allowed the money to be spent on things such as painting, remodeling, flooring, and even weight equipment. On video, Councilmember Raymond was told by the city attorney Specifically, in the ordinance, the money was for personnel and equipment. As far as personnel, we can see that didn't happen. Measure B matter was turned over to the Merced County District Attorney's Office about 5 months ago. I'm sure it'll be handled by either the local or state court.
All right, thanks. Jim?
Yeah, in the spirit of what Mayor Nelson said about involvement in the community, I invite everybody tomorrow night to attend at 6 o'clock, thank God, the Public Safety Oversight Committee meeting for Measure B. It's your money, people, and you need to see where it's going. And it's important that you know, you become involved in that. See what you voted for. See the terms and conditions. I know that the City Council gets minutes for this meeting. Those minutes are so utterly incomplete that even the council doesn't know what's going on with that expenditure. So I highly encourage the public to attend the meeting tomorrow night, 6 o'clock, right here. Secondly, there's been a lot of confusion and discussion on social media about the 777 aircraft that has been flying around that I've been intimately involved with. And we've had 2 of them in the area over the last 3 weeks, 3.5 weeks. And they're completed now, but you know, some of the comments, I mean, you know, they flew over my place so close I could see the pilots. I can't even see them when I'm standing on the ground next to it. So, I mean, this plane is a monster. They're not chem spraying. It's not part of the military. They're not breaking the sound barrier. There's just a lot of things that people are saying out there that just ain't so. It's very, very well organized and planned. We've been planning this since September. It's one of those things that is going to be possibly ongoing out of Castle. It does not mean that there's the base is not going to reopen again, and all these other things that people are, you know, dreaming. It's just we're using the place for what it should have been used for almost 30 years ago, and finally we're doing that. And these large frame aircraft that are coming in and out of there, they're the ones that are, you know, going to benefit the most. In about another week and a half, the first 777 that was in here will be returning. It's going to do some more testing. Please do not panic, people. It is only going to be flying circles around the base and a little bit over Merced and Winton and those places. And all it's going to be doing is just doing sound testing. And the FAA is aboard the aircraft, so everything is above board. Okay? Thanks.
Thanks for that information. Okay, anybody else?
Linda Dash, Atwater. I just want to thank you all 5 of you, for using some good old common sense and doing what was right this evening. I think it's going to actually benefit everybody. It's a win-win for everyone. And also to back up what Keith Pulowski said about Measure B, we all worked very hard to get Measure B passed. And that was to actually help our police and fire. But you've abused Measure B. And the former police chief just cut out 2 police officers like we don't need them. And I think it's wrong, and I think it needs to be fixed. Hopefully you're planning some budget study sessions where the general public is invited. All the folks here can come too, and we can all see what kind of, how you spend your money. Thanks.
No, it's how we spend your money.
It's ours?
I think so. Anybody else? Okay, so no one else coming forward. I'm going to close public comment. We are now going to do council reports and updates. We'll start here on my left and go around.
So I personally loved seeing the airplanes flying over Atwater. I thought it was amazing. I didn't grow up in Atwater during that time, but I thought it was a pretty cool thing to see. And I felt very well informed on, the aircraft that were flying over us. So I wouldn't mind to see more of it. I thought it was pretty cool. I also enjoyed reading to the young people at Winton Elementary School. That was fun during Reading Across America Week. And I would like to congratulate our wonderful Lady Falcons on a season very well played. I'm not even much of a sports fan, but I really, really loved watching those girls play. They played with their whole heart, and I enjoyed it very much. So job well done, ladies, and I just want to thank all of the Fruitland residents for coming out this evening and voicing your concerns. I know that there are other things that you could be doing, but participating in governance is very important, and so I just want you to know that your voice matters, and it certainly mattered this evening, so thanks.
Mayor, I have nothing tonight.
Okay, I'll just say, girls basketball, thanks for bringing that up. We will have them here eventually for a recognition. Okay, Danny?
I have nothing tonight.
I want to thank the citizens from Fruitland coming to open my eyes with a lot of things. And trust me, I'm not going to, I'm going to take everything with a grain of salt. And I too want to congratulate the Lady Falcons. I had a great time watching them and even traveled to Sacramento to watch them play. They have done a great job, and I will be honored to sit here and give them their kudos for a job well done. I think that's it.
Okay, city manager update.
Yeah, thank you. There's a couple of events coming up, including on March 15th, we have our 2025 spring cleanup at 2877 Atwater Boulevard. That's at the flea market from 7 to noon. Also, the Easter egg hunt will be coming up on April 12th at Veterans Park. The check-in is at 9 a.m. and the event starts at 10. See you there.
Okay. So now we're going to adjourn to closed session. We'll be going into labor negotiations with City Manager, Human Resources Director Jana Souza, and regarding the AFSCME Local 2703 Miscellaneous Employees Unit. Is there any public comment regarding closed session? Seeing none, I'm closing public comment, and we will adjourn this meeting to conference room A.